Thank you. Thank you all very much, and thank you to Drake University for giving me the opportunity and a platform to have a conversation about having faith in America. How many of y'all would agree that this is a good time to talk about restoring faith in each other, faith in our future, faith in our nation? Dylan, good job. Thank you very much. Pastor Steve, thank you very much. God bless you. It's amazing to be here, just steps from where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared his message and his ministry. I was born in 1965, just 2 years after Dr. King said, "I have a dream." I am living proof that American dreams do come true. My mom spent her teenage years surrounded by segregation. My grandfather, her father, had to step off of the sidewalk to let white folks pass by. He had to drop out of school in the 3rd grade and start picking cotton. When I was a kid, I remember my granddaddy coming to the kitchen table with a newspaper in his hands. Only later did I realize he had never learned to read. But he was determined that he would set an example for his grandsons to follow. Life handed my granddaddy every single temptation to lose hope, but he would not. He had faith, deep and stubborn faith. Faith in God, in the future, and in America. And do you know what? That man lived long enough to see his family go from cotton to Congress in his lifetime. Praise God. My mom, whom I love dearly, worked 16-hour days as a nurse's aide, changing bedpans and rolling patients. But now she holds the Bible when her son takes the oath of office in the United States Senate. I'm here because my family chose faith over anger, responsibility over resentment, and patriotism over pity. My granddaddy taught me I could be bitter or better, not both. My mom said we could be victims or victors. She chose victorious. I am living proof that our founding fathers were geniuses we should celebrate, not cancel. I'll wait for you. We must have provided Dylan an advanced copy of the speech. You're doing a good job right there. Please continue and encourage everybody else to follow your lead, brother. That we are indeed a land of opportunity, not a land of oppression. This is just my American story. Each of you and your families have your own. This is why my soul is pained when I look across our nation today. We have a crisis of optimism. Barely more than 10% of Americans say the state of our union is strong. Almost 3/4 say we're on the wrong track. We have a crisis of hope. The fewest people in 30 years believe today's kids will have better lives than their parents. Life expectancy is down, overdoses and suicides are up, and we have a crisis of faith. In the freest, fairest land the world has ever known, the percentage of our citizens who say that they're very proud to be Americans just hit an all-time low. We're built on the foundation of faith, but belief is declining and religious liberty is under assault. Too many Americans have lost faith in each other. Neighborhoods and families are drifting apart. And too many of us have lost faith in itself. Fentanyl isn't the only poison flooding our countries. Politicians in the culture are getting communities hooked on the drug of victimhood and the narcotic of despair. They are addictive and they are lethal. People see themselves as victims with no hope, no accountability, and no skin in the game. How did this happen? For 2.5 centuries, the rest of the world marveled at Americans' confidence and ambition. What went wrong? Pretend you are our nation's greatest enemy. Say you wanted a blueprint to ruin America. What would you put in it? First, you would take aim at our patriotism. So you'd amplify attention seekers who say America is an evil country. Make it easy to get rich and famous by feeding the empty calories of anger to people who are starving for hope. 100 years ago, children were taught the color of their skin defined them. If you wanted to ruin America, you'd bring that back. Tell white kids they are oppressors. Tell black kids and brown kids their destiny is grievance, not greatness. You'd make schools worse at teaching math, science, and English, but start sex ed in kindergarten. If a football coach prays with high schoolers, you get them fired. But if teachers tell little kids they can pick their gender, they'd get promoted. You'd let big labor bosses trap poor kids in the worst schools with no choice and no voice. If you wanted to ruin our economy, you'd print and spend trillions of dollars we don't have. You'd set off the worst inflation in 40 years. You'd make workers' paychecks and senior savings worth less and less with every passing month. If you wanted to ruin America, you'd replace law and order with fear and chaos. You'd put violent criminals right back on the streets and call it fairness. You let drugs and mental illness take over city blocks and call it compassion. You demand empathy for murderers and carjackers, but you'd send SWAT teams after pro-life Christians and the Department of Justice after parents who show up at school board meetings. And you definitely keep our borders unsafe, insecure, and wide open. You spend the people's money hiring IRS agents instead of Border Patrol agents. And if anybody questions it, just call them bigots. If you wanted to ruin America, you'd keep our own oil, gas, and minerals in the ground. You'd project weakness and indecision abroad. You tell Americans our brilliant Constitution is racist, sexist, and outdated. You'd come after our First Amendment rights so we can't think for ourselves, and after our Second Amendment so we can't defend ourselves, and even after life itself. You demand unlimited abortion all the way to full term and sue religious hospitals if they won't do it. You'd work to push faith-based businesses, hospitals, and church daycares out of the public square. And if you really wanted to ruin America, you would try to convince everybody that it's more important and more effective to kneel in protest than to kneel in prayer. In other words, if you wanted a blueprint to ruin America, you'd keep doing exactly what Joe Biden has allowed the left to do for the last 2 years. I get animated, I really do. I get animated about this because these aren't political issues to me. This is personal. These people who call themselves progressive are attacking every rung of the ladder that helped me climb. Yeah. I was the teenager whose spirit would have been crushed by a culture obsessed with identity politics and racial strife. We were the family with a fragile budget that the Democrats' inflation would have destroyed. I grew up in North Charleston, South Carolina, in the kind of neighborhood that liberals claim they're helping when they defund and demonize the police. I was the poor African-American kid they claim they're protecting. So I want the left to hear me clearly. Your soft on crime policies are killing us, literally. The last thing my family needed was more murders, carjackings, and chaos all around. Woke prosecutors and anti-cop activists are getting people shot and killed. They are locking grandmothers in their homes from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. They are putting more kids, not fewer kids, into the prison pipeline. My relationship with the Lord changed my life. So it is personal to me when Christian teachers, nurses, and small business owners are persecuted because the left's definition of tolerance doesn't include them. Like many poor families, we moved around a lot, and I attended 4 different elementary schools by the 4th grade. Later, I almost flunked out of high school. My education, my future, was at the mercy of my zip code. So it is personal to me that Democrats spent COVID locking kids out of the classroom and now want to lock kids in failing schools. And you better believe it is personal when liberals suggest that people like my mama, a young, poor, black lady, would have a more dignified and better life if I was not born at all. These people have so little faith in America, they've lost faith in life itself. It's also personal to me when Joe Biden cynically invokes the pain of our past to cover up his failures in the present. 1 year ago, Joe Biden said that the new voting law in Georgia was Jim Crow 2.0. My family lived through the real Jim Crow, when folks like my granddaddy were subjected to poll taxes, literacy tests, or had to guess the number of jelly beans in a jar just to cast a ballot. That was Jim Crow. Now, here's what the Republican voting law did in Georgia. It created record turnout, short lines, and 0% of black voters complaining about the system. 0% complaints. Yeah. Let me be clear. These painful parts of America's past are not Joe Biden's to dredge up and exploit just because he's losing an argument. I understand that President Biden lives in the past because he's been in Washington for 50 years. But we need new leaders who will lift us up, not tear us down. So let's talk about what that kind of leadership would look like. A leader with faith in America would have faith in Americans. That means cutting taxes, not raising taxes, so families can keep their own money, build their own lives, and define their own dreams. It means we stop burying American businesses in regulation and paperwork and unleash the best workers and entrepreneurs to compete and win all across the globe. It means we finally bust up the K-12 monopoly that lets bureaucrats and big labor bosses block our kids from their highest potential. It means parents' rights and family choices, and funding students instead of systems, like here in Iowa, and like the amazing governor of your state just passed school choice, giving every child opportunity for a great education. Faith in the American people, faith in the American people means faith in freedom. Free enterprise, free speech, because we are a free people. But freedom requires personal responsibility. If you take away someone's accountability, you are denying their dignity. In the United States of America, if you are able-bodied, you work. If you get a loan, you pay it back. If you commit a violent crime, you go to prison. If you want to be a future American, you don't start by breaking our laws and coming in through the back door. Two basic principles: freedom and responsibility. But these simple truths have taken our nation to unbelievable heights. 5 years ago, Republicans passed a historic tax reform bill, and I was one of the lead sponsors. The GOP, the Great Opportunity Party, we cut income taxes for every single bracket. We doubled the child tax credit. We brought job creation and capital investment back home to America. I wrote the part of the law that created the opportunity zones, getting government further out of the way in the communities that needed jobs and investment the most. It was a massive transfer of money and power out of Washington, D.C., back to kitchen tables and small businesses where the cash registers ring all over America. Democrats called it Armageddon. I called it betting on the American people. The good news is we got to see who's right. Here's what happened. 2 years later, we had the most pro-worker, pro-family economy in my lifetime. The unemployment rate for African Americans, for Hispanics, for Asians hit an all-time low. All-time meaning in all of American history, low. The lowest female unemployment since World War II. Wages at the bottom grew faster than the wages at the top. And just before the pandemic, our policies had 9 in 10 Americans saying they were satisfied with how things were going in their own lives, the highest number ever. And even though we cut taxes, revenues to the Treasury went up, not down, even with lower taxes. Our brand of pro-growth, pro-family, pro-working conservatism accomplished all of this with just one bill. Imagine if we had an entire agenda. Now, we talk a lot about getting government out of the way, and rightly so. But the party of Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan knows that strong leaders do not hesitate to defend our citizens and our Constitution if necessary. Believing in capitalism and trade does not mean we let communist China breach our sovereign borders, steal our intellectual property, and dominate our crucial supply chains. Limited government does not mean we let big tech spy on our conversations or censor our discourse or let big banks decide what you can buy with your own money. Conservatives cannot let woke corporations appoint themselves that we, the people, do not have the right to vote them out. And freedom of expression has never meant that the government and government schools can spend your money indoctrinating your kids with radical nonsense you disagree with. Parents, you do not pay property taxes so that adults with agendas can tell your kids that there are 100 genders, but only one ideology. Yeah. Moms and dads deserve transparency and accountability from their kids' school and the power of choice if they don't like what they see. So many politicians think that faith in America means faith in them. Imagine what we could achieve if new leaders put their faith in all of you. I see a future where working and middle-class families have a banquet of opportunity laid out before them. I see low inflation, stable prices, cheaper energy bills, affordable groceries for your family. I see a nation full of thriving businesses, large and small. And then I see a bidding war of businesses trying to figure out how to hire each of you. I see your paycheck growing faster than inflation, not slower, and less of it being taken by the IRS. I see great schools, a great public school, a parochial school, and a STEM school, all competing for the right in your community to educate your kids. I see kids being taught the ABCs, not CRT. We're honoring our history, not tearing down statues. And the learning loss from the pandemic has been erased. I see your family sleeping soundly at night because violent crime is down. Drugs are stopped at the border, and the might of the United States military is beyond question. I see a future where every innocent life is protected by our laws and cherished by our culture. And children cannot be killed simply because they are helpless. I see every American free to worship as we see fit, with nobody yelling at you that you keep your faith at the doors of your worship, where our faith informs every part of our lives. I see a future where common sense has rebuilt common ground, where we've created real unity, not by compromising away our conservatism, but by winning converts to our conservatism, where our movement can once again carry 49 states and the popular vote. I see 330 million Americans getting back to celebrating our shared blessings again, tolerating our differences again, and having each other's backs again. This is what I see, a new American sunrise, even brighter than before. We know people will say that our message is naive, that our faith is foolish, but they don't know who they're talking to. Conservatism is my personal proof there is no ceiling in life. I can go as high as my character, my education, and my perseverance will take me. I bear witness to that. I testify to that. So for those of you on the left, you can call me a prop. You can call me a token. You can call me the N-word. You can question my blackness. You can even call me Uncle Tim. Just understand, your words are no match for my evidence. Your pessimism is no match for my history. My existence shows your irrelevance. The truth of my life disproves your lies. I will continue to proclaim boldly this truth from every mountaintop. Then I will do so from the deepest valley. I will do it in the boardroom, but I will also go to the classroom. I will do it in an auditorium surrounded by friends, but I will also go to an inner city church surrounded by skeptics. I believe it because I have lived it. I have lived the original dream. I have held the truth, the unalienable truth, that all men and women are created equal and endowed by our Creator with the right to be free. I am not merely a believer in the principles of conservatism. I am an eyewitness. I bear testimony that America can do for you what it has done for me. They can choose grievance, but we choose greatness. They can choose failure, but we choose faith. Will you choose it with me? Will you join me as a messenger of hope, a missionary for the power of our ideas? Now, I know that when you close the speech, you say, God bless America. But we should know God has already blessed America. So let us be a blessing to him, to each other, and to the freest land the world has ever known, the United States of America. God bless you.